All right, so we're still talking about equations here, but now we're talking about literal equations, and actually this should say literal equations and formulas. So a formula is an equation that states a relationship. So like a formula for finding density, right, would be mass over volume. So these are things you use that someone has already discovered, and there's variables in them, and you plug in the things you know to determine something, right? And we're calling them literal equations because we know that the letters represent certain values, right? So they're not like these abstracts x plus 7 and what are we talking about? They have context. So let's just do a couple and see how they feel. So this first one says that James wants to calculate the time it takes to earn interest on a principal investment with simple interest. So the thing I forgot to write here is that there is a formula to calculate simple interest. Okay, so you won't have to memorize this, but this is something that it actually said in an example I forgot to write down. So what do these letters stand for? So what this means is if I want to find the interest earned on an account. So that basically means if interest is like if I go put money in the bank gives me money for keeping my money there, right? They pay me a small amount of interest for holding my money. So if the interest can be found by taking the principal, which is the amount of money you put into the bank, times the interest rate, right? That's what R is, interest rate, times the time you leave it in there. Okay, so this formula is something that we know. It's given in the problem. If I want to find the interest, I take the principal, the amount of money I have, times the interest rate the bank is giving me, times how long I keep it in there, and I can find the interest. Okay, so he wants to figure out the time it takes to earn interest on a principal investment with a simple interest. So basically what he's saying is he knows the interest he wants to make. He knows how much money he wants to put in there, and he knows the interest rate of the bank. But he doesn't know how much time he has to leave it in there. So he's trying to solve this formula for time. So all they want us to do is rearrange it. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to write the formula. I equals P times R times T. They want us to rearrange or solve it for T. That means we want to get T by itself. Okay, if I want to get T by itself, you guys know how to do this. I need to get rid of this P and this R. Well, this T is being multiplied by R and being multiplied by P. So what is the inverse operation? I could almost, if I wanted to, I could write it like this. Right? I can separate it. Because multiplication, it doesn't matter which order you do it. But I'm trying to get this P and the R off of here. So what am I going to do? The opposite of multiplying by P and R is going to be to divide by P and R. So it goes away on this side. And all that I have left here is a T for time. And what's left on the left side is I divided by P times R, or PR, right? So this is the answer. That's all they wanted us to do, was rearrange the equation so that we can solve it for time, or T. So this is nothing really different from what you've done, except there are no numbers. You just have to work with variables, which seems weird at first, but you can do it. Let's try another one. Here's another formula. Distance can be found by using the following formula. Distance equals the rate, or kind of your speed, times the time it took to travel there. So if I was going to travel 100 miles, I could take how fast I'm going times how long it would take me, and I could figure out the distance, right? So here's an example about Sarah. Sarah bikes 6 miles from her house. So if she's biking 6 miles from her house, that is her distance, right? That's how far she's going. In 30 minutes. Well, 30 minutes, that's the time. What is her rate, or her speed? So they're asking us to solve for this, for R. So I know D equals rate times time. If I need to solve for R, I need to get R by itself. So I need to get rid of this T. Right? So now I know distance divided by time equals R. Now I can solve for rate because I have the formula rearranged and I just plug in what I know. Distance we said was 6. Time we said was 30 minutes. Right? And rate is R. So what is 6 divided by 30? 6 divided by 30. Let me get my calculator, we can check it. 6 divided by 30 is 0.2. So her rate is 0.2. But what does that mean, 0.2? So what's her speed? Her speed is in, we just figured it out in miles per minute. So 0.2 miles per minute. That's how fast Sarah is biking. Okay? Let's try a couple more. So this formula is used in science where if you're giving a temperature in Fahrenheit, that you can change it to Celsius by plugging in that number here. Fahrenheit minus 32 times 5/9 will give you the degrees in Celsius, right? C is Celsius, F is Fahrenheit. So the first step is to solve the formula for F. So they want us to figure out F equals something. So the first thing I'm going to do is distribute that 5/9 in so I can solve this for F. So right now I have C equals, well, 5/9 times F is 5/9 F. And 5/9 times 32. Well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do a little thought bubble on the side here. 5/9 times 32. So this is just a fraction multiplication. Remember, I can put, since 32 is a whole number, I can put it over 1. So my first step is, what is 5 times 32? 5 times 30 is 150 plus 10 more is 160 over 9 times 1 is 9. So I don't think that's going to work out nice, but let's see. 160 divided by 9. Yeah, it ends up being something like this. 17.7. So what I'm going to do is leave it as a fraction. Okay? I'm going to leave it as a fraction. So I'm going to do 5/9 times 32 ends up being negative, right? Because it's positive times negative. And then we just figured out it's 160 over 9. So I'm just going to leave it like that. I don't want to change it to the weird decimal if I don't have to. So now I need to solve for F. So I need to get F by itself. So the first thing I need to do is add 160 over 9 to each side. Right? So this cancels out. So now I'm left with C plus 160 over 9, because I can't add those, they're not like terms, equals 5/9 F. All right, I'm almost solved it for F, except now I need to get this 5/9 out of here. This is times 5/9. So the opposite of multiplying by 5/9 is dividing by 5/9. Divide, and remember we have to divide each part by 5/9, or I can say under the whole thing, or I can put it under each if that is helpful. Okay, so this is where it gets weird, right? This goes away, but now I have to deal with all of this, right? So what do I really have? I have C divided by 5/9. I'm just going to write it over here, then we'll deal with it. Plus 160 over 9 divided by 5/9 equals F. So we solved for F, it's just weird, right? So hopefully you can remember that when you're dividing by a fraction, it's the same as, remember this, keep, change, flip. So I can keep the first number the same, which in this case is C, then change division to multiplication, and then flip the second fraction over. So instead of it being 5/9, it's 9/5. So I just changed that one. Plus, now let's do this one. It's going to be 160 over 9 times, flips the second one over, equals F. Okay, now hopefully you can see, oh look, perfect, I can cancel these 9s out, if you remember that, right? So what I end up with 160 over 5, I bet that comes out to a nice number. 160 divided by 5. 160 divided by 5. Yeah, it comes out to a beautiful 32. So this whole thing becomes 32. This thing is just 9/5 C, because remember we like to put the number in front of the variable. So 9/5 C plus 32 equals F. We just solved that equation for F. It only seemed more challenging because there were fractions, but we totally did it. Now part B, I'm going to put down here, it says solve the, use the formula to find the Fahrenheit equivalent of 190 C. So basically they're just saying use this equation and plug in 190. So I end up with 9/5 times 190 plus 32 equals F. So what would that be in Fahrenheit? Well, let's just do it here to save time. Okay, 9 divided by 5 is that, times 190 equals plus 32. 374 degrees. So 374 equals F. So we just found out if your oven says 190 degrees Celsius, it's equal to 374 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. Now let's do this last one, solve for H. Hopefully, so this equation or this formula is volume equals length times width times height. Drew my H crazy. So that is the volume of a rectangular prism. Remember, if you take the length times width times the height, you get the volume of a rectangular prism. It tells us to solve for H, so it wants us to get H by itself. So I could rewrite this like this. Actually, what I want to do is volume equals length width times H, right? Because I want to get H by itself. So what's the opposite of multiplying times length and width? It's dividing by length times width. So that cancels out. So volume over length times width gives me the height. That's all I had to do was rearrange that one for height. I know I went fast on this last one. I just didn't want to make this video too long. So we'll practice a few together today before you work alone. Okay? See you next time.